welcome and thank you all from wherever you're joining for joining us on this town hall today, where my colleague John Swisher and I will be discussing today's healthcare initiatives. Our agenda today is quite simple and straightforward. We'll get right to it, and we'll take your questions as we go, and we'll have another opportunity at the end to address more questions. So without much further ado, my name is Cotton Leon. I lead the business development efforts here at KiriWorks, and my team reaches out to healthcare payers in and around the country, consulting and wanting to understand their businesses and exploring how our team here at KiriWorks can be of help. So, John, why don't you go ahead and tell us about yourselves, KiriWorks, and we'll go from there.
Sure. For those of you who don't know me, my name's John Swisher. I manage both, pardon me, our sales and product teams here at KiriWorks. Actually started at KiriWorks on the technical sales side of the house, moved over to manage the development team, and then now in a pretty neat place and a unique opportunity, being able to oversee both the sales and the development efforts at KiriWorks. And KiriWorks is pretty unique too within the Highland community, because we develop what we call accelerators, right, or pre-configured solutions built on the OnBase platform, right? So we utilize OnBase as our development platform, and those accelerators, depending on the specific solution, are usually anywhere from about 75 to 85% built or pre-configured, if you will. But beyond just being a solution, they're built with growth and change in mind, right? So even after implemented, those changes and modifications as your organization grows and changes are quicker and easier. So, with those accelerators and really all of our development efforts, if you will, we've had a couple of key efforts. The big one is, empowering users or your workers in a number of different ways, whether it be removing repetitive tasks, lower value tasks from their day-to-day using RPA maybe, relieving relieving the burden from IT and related staff and their responsibility to the OnBase solution by migrating it to the Highland Cloud, or developing frameworks. We use that term a lot, that allow for, like I mentioned before, easy modifications. Sometimes those are even modifications directly to the process flow that you can make right from the end user client. So developing with those key ideas in mind for KiriWorks is the #1 priority.
And thank you for sharing that, John. So in resume, KiriWorks, we're leading systems integrator that we've designed our solution accelerators that are designed to streamline business processes and workflows, driving that digital transformation. John, for those payers and folks that have joined us today, you've mentioned Highland and the Highland Cloud a couple of times. So why don't you just quickly explain to them who Highland is and our relationship with Highland?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Highland is the developers of OnBase, and that is our case management, development, rapid application deployment, all of the above platform. So the nice thing for KiriWorks is that we have thousands of developers at Highland, right? That is developing and constantly enhancing the OnBase product and their suite, and allowing us to take our development even further. So we use that platform exclusively to build out our solutions. And along with the development of OnBase, they have their own private cloud, and that is it's built and designed in such a way that it's set up for OnBase to succeed, right? And whether that be, kind of auto scaling your solution, or, removing burdens from your organization, it is a great solution for those folks that want to take advantage of maybe offloading some of those internal responsibilities today.
Got it. And how long have we been working with Highland?
Oh, geez, I want to say, I want to say since 1997. So we were an early partner of Highlands, and we continue to be, the top 5 partners in the world for Highland software.
Got it. So let's get right to it. So one of the things you mentioned earlier, which was one of the key takeaways of the conversation today, is RPA, robotic process automation. And as we sit here today, lots have been said about RPA, it being, robots. But what is RPA, John? How do you describe RPA? Why is it important today? And why should clients explore RPA? Why should they look into it?
Yeah, and for some folks attending today, maybe you're already familiar with RPA. Maybe this is the first time you're hearing about it, right? So, when we think of robots, I tend to think of real life robots in movies or something like that, or maybe even Alexa or Cortana. But when we're talking about RPA, it's not that type of robot, right? So what RPA does, and what we're tackling from a development perspective, is again removing those lower value repetitive tasks from your employees. And the way that we do that is through Highland's RPA tool. We essentially record the user interaction, right? So I'll give you an example of, hey, as part of a case that I'm processing, I need to go to an external site and download some information. And if that's part of my daily duties, depending on maybe contracts, for example, right, or credentialing, I need to go and do things like primary source verification. And I'm constantly going out to the same sites, pulling down different information. So we can kind of record that interaction, make some modifications to it in the areas that we want to be dynamic, maybe a provider name or something like that, to perform those searches. And then now all of those day-to-day type activities have been offloaded from the end user so that they can focus on higher priority tasks, right? Things that truly require human interaction. And the benefit of these robots is, they're electronic, right? So they don't require time off. They work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. There's no overtime. They're constantly running.
Yeah.
And so, normally, and I'll probably beat you to the question you already have, Clinton, is, okay, what does that mean for my organization? Are we, going to be replacing employees with robots?
Yeah, that's definitely something that we've all been hearing about, that, people just being so very apprehensive about robots and just not even wanting to talk about it or entertain the idea of of robots, because again, my job's on the line. And so what do you say to that? How do you address that?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is not the intention, right? Because there are things that robots just can't do right now, right? They don't do well making decisions where there isn't data backing it up, right? So this conversation between you and I, right? This can't be done by a robot. But going back to those activities, that I talked about of, hey, data already exists, and I need to either copy this data to another application or input it into a portal, or use that data to trigger search results and download that information back down into OnBase. Those are great scenarios for robots, and it will never replace humans, right? We're taking those lower value activities away from their day-to-day, putting that behind the scenes so they don't even see that interaction, and again, freeing them up to tackle higher value activities, right?
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
So I was just going to ask, what's the Keyworks RPA plan this year and moving forward? What are we looking at?
Yeah, so tied to RPA, we actually have 3 separate development efforts happening right now with Keyworks. 2 of which have to do with independent review organizations, independent review entities, Maximus. So I'll start there. On the Medicare side of the house, we know that for Part C cases, if it isn't a full overturn, right, those cases need a level 2. They need to be reviewed by the IRE, and that's portal that everyone on the Medicare side is familiar with. So one of our efforts is developing a bot that will know once we've reached that point in the case. We already have an auto creation of level 2, right? So what this will do is, after that level 2 is created, it'll gather up all the required information, all the required documents, and then behind the scenes, it'll go and log into the IRE portal, upload all of that information, wait for a decision, and then automatically pull all that down. So not only is user not performing those activities, but they don't have to remember to even run that robot or check. All that's done for you behind the scenes. And in a similar matter, on the non-Medicare side, we're doing that same thing, and it's more of a genericized because everyone has a different IRO, right? Doing that same thing, and we've had some great recent successes recently testing it out through a couple of different IRO portals, which is really exciting. And then lastly, going back to the Medicare side of the house, thinking about complaints and the complaint tracking module. So, as those come in, these RPA bots will go out to the CTM website, pull those complaints down so that you can process them as you normally would. And then upon resolution, it's going and updating the portal again. So it allows you to stay within your application. You're not having to go to other ones or other portals. It's doing all of that for you. And then further on down the road, I think about credentialing. I managed primary source verification, and having those bots perform those activities as part of our credentialing efforts as well.
And so, John, would it be safe to say that RPA or robotic process automation applies to every department within an organization?
Yeah, absolutely. This one being healthcare payer focused, but absolutely. I mean, just think about the activities that one would have to perform in any organization, right? Regardless of vertical or department. Think about employee onboarding, employee separation, background checks. Things like that are just really simple, quick fixes that can be alleviated quite significantly with the help of RPA.
Got it. And as it regards the healthcare payer vertical and industry, the RPA applies to all lines of businesses as well, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It does apply to everyone. So again, I'm talking about what Keyworks is developing from an accelerator standpoint.
Right.
But absolutely, if you have already identified, points in your organization or processes that can really take advantage of it, please let us know, and we can walk you through what that looks like from an effort perspective, from a configuration perspective, and kind of talk through with you, what is a good plan of attack for automating those.
Got it. And so to recap, like I always do, RPAs, they're not there to, they're not taking people's jobs away. On the contrary, they're there to help plans, be streamlined, optimized, so that staff members and departments can focus on those items and those things that really matter most. And these are robots, so they operate 24/7. Obviously eliminate human errors. And so, John, for plans that, and for even folks on the line today that are open to the idea of RPA, that are exploring RPA, that are sort of fielding questions and inquiries about, hey, look into RPA, look into this thing. This is what people are talking about today. This is what other plants are doing today. What's your advice? What's your counsel? What do you have to say to them as they navigate the RPA world?
Yeah, and I kind of relate it to think about the amount of time that in your day-to-day life, personal and professional, you need to do something as simple as find and download a document or upload one or input information or pull that information down as part of your day-to-day. I know, Clinton, you do this all the time, and those are great scenarios that are ripe for RPA. I mean, if you have to do that and you can think about, hey, I spent X amount of time today on this. Think about what an organization goes through, right? And they have users dedicated to just doing things like that. So multiply that out for a large organization. And actually, we just received a related question, and it was, we've just started exploring RPA as an organization. Can bots be used as a way to exchange data between systems instead of writing code? And yes, absolutely. So that's a great question. There really are no rules, right, on things that you can use RPA for. And whether it's RPA or another solution within the OnBase suite, maybe application enabler or a pre-built direct integration. I don't think we've run into any solutions we could not exchange data with when we needed to, right? So we have a lot of different options. I hope that answers your question.
Right. So another thing that you mentioned that we want to talk about here today is the cloud. As we sit here today, I've heard all sorts about cloud being, someone else's computer, just being in some other country. Is it true? Is it accurate? What is the cloud? Why is it important? And what's its relevance today to payers?
Yeah, it's, I mean, to the letter of the law, it is, sometimes it's your computer, sometimes it's someone else's, but ultimately it's the computing is not being done or stored where you are, right? It's up in the cloud. And we talked a little bit about the Highland Cloud, built exclusively for your OnBase solutions, and they're hosting it. So it gives you, as an organization, a couple of different things. It gives you peace of mind more than anything, right? So security, threats are increasing every single day, right?
Right.
Being able to keep your system up at a reasonable rate. If we look at folks that have their solutions on-prem, I'm sure they want to be in the high 90s% of uptime. The Highland Cloud starts at 99% uptime, right? You can only get more uptime from there. So removing that burden. And one of the things I forgot to mention about security, all the documents in the Highland Cloud are encrypted. Data is protected in use, in transit, in rest. So ultimately, I'm building up to, a lot of those things that you're responsible for today or that you own the burden of, you can offload those to the Highland Cloud, right? So whether it's checking logs to make sure that services are running, or it's adding a new load balancer to handle new traffic, right? You can relieve all of those burdens. And from a payer perspective, the probably the most common term I've heard, and I'm sure you've heard, Clinton, as we go to these conferences, whether they're in person or virtual, is member satisfaction, right? That is the goal. That is the key. That's what everyone's striving towards. And you can allow yourself to get a little bit closer to that goal of member satisfaction if you're offloading some of those responsibilities and burdens that you have today, right? And maybe this is the first time you're hearing about the Highland Cloud, right? Maybe it isn't, but it isn't a new thing, right? It's been around for more than 15 years. There's over 1.2 million users accessing 9 billion with a B documents and counting. So it has been around for a while, and up to this point, it's stood the test of time, right?
Yeah. There's a chat question that came in here that says, "How is using the Keywork solution different in the cloud than on premise?"
Yeah. So I mean, from an end user's perspective, it's identical, right? Whether you're using the Unity client or web client, our accelerators are designed, and OnBase is designed in the cloud so that once you open up the client, your interaction is the same. If you think about on-prem versus in the cloud, you're still hitting an app server, you're still hitting all those things you need to do. It's just they're not on your property anymore, right? But from the folks on the other side of the house, think about on-base admin, database admin, security, infrastructure. If your title ends in admin, right? Again, going back to that point I keep driving, part of their work effort has been freed up for higher priority tasks, right? And everything is high priority in IT. So the more that we can open up their time so they can use their time a little bit better, a little bit more efficiently, it's a win-win.
Another question that came up was, which is better, private or public cloud?
Well, I'll say in the OnBase instance, right, it is the private cloud. The Highland Cloud is a private cloud, and it's designed in such a way to optimize your OnBase solution, right? And for those of you who don't know the difference between a public or a private cloud, if you think of your AWS or your Azure, right, those are the big public cloud. They're great. But with those, you need to scale out your solution. You need to pay for the servers, the processing, operating systems, all that fun stuff, and you still are responsible for managing it. It's essentially that you just don't have the cost of capital of buying those servers yourself, right? And if we look at what that responsibility model looks like within the Highland Cloud, there's a thin sliver of customer responsibility, and that's responsibility to your solution and making modifications to it as you see fit. Everything else is now the responsibility of Highland. So when you think about it that way, the choice and benefit of the Highland Cloud becomes pretty clear.
And since we work with plans of all sizes and all lines of businesses, would you say cloud applies to everyone? So because obviously we work with plans that have less than 50,000, less than 20,000 members, and plans of over 4 million members. So would it be fair to say that cloud applies to everyone regardless of size in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, it's a one size fits all, right? And that kind of does speak to the scalability that I was talking about, right? So, as your solution expands or as your organization grows, there's likely going to be new users, new departments utilizing the tool, and you're going to need to beef up your infrastructure, right? And that's one of those things where it's really beneficial from the Highland Cloud perspective because it's scaled for you automatically. You don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about disaster recovery. or anything like that. And all of those things, right, regardless of size of organization, are important, right? You need to make sure that you're secure, that you have a recovery plan, that your items and data are backed up, and it's scaled appropriately. And for me, that is the biggest benefit. And funny enough, I'm glad you brought that up because it used to be, from my experience, it was the smaller organizations that took advantage of the cloud, and that was because they just didn't have or want to spend the capital on servers or storage or things like that. And they used the cloud as a way to spin up their solution much quicker than they could with their own internal resources. But since that point, it's really opened up to, again, your point, Clinton, organizations of all sizes, whether or not you may have a couple of servers in a server room that used to be a closet, or your organization has multiple server farms of hundreds of servers, right? Scalability is the key.
Nice. And so obviously, due to the number of security threats over the recent last couple of years, which is what has been pushing sort of the industry and plans to do more in terms of security, to sort of summarize what you've said, cloud applies to every organization of every size, and the threats keep coming. And so with, you talked about security, you talked about the uptime, you talked about scalability, and you talked about it being cost effective, versus hiring all these administrators, engineers, setting up these firewalls and all that. So plans today that are exploring, that are talking about cloud, we should look into this. We should talk to someone about this. Why is it important for us today? What's, again, your advice to them?
Yeah, I mean, my advice would be talk to us. It doesn't hurt to open up a dialogue and a conversation. And it's fairly easy for us at CureWorks to, whether you're an existing on-premise customer or whether you're completely new to CureWorks and you're not a customer, we have a pretty good process for kind of guiding you through that move to the cloud, but also what that's going to look like for you, over the next couple of years, and even have the ability to really hone in on the return on investment that the cloud will give you. So, you're probably saying, hey, I may need some help moving to the cloud internally or selling it internally. We do have a lot of tools available to assist you with that. And, reach out to your account managers. If you're not sure who it is, I think, Clinton, you're going to flash our contact information as we conclude. Yep. So yeah, just reach out to us. We're happy to tell you everything about the cloud.
Nice. And that's what we do, right? We connect with folks of departments of health plans and understand their current processes, their current workflows, the applications and software that they're using, and how that's working out, what they like about it, what they'll like to see and why they'll like to see that, and go from there and start painting that picture of, here's how we can help, here's how we can fit in, here's how we can take you on this journey from X to Y to Z and help you accomplish all these set goals, priorities, initiatives that you've set before you, and your department. So with that, I guess we can open it up to more questions. So if you have questions, please send them our way, and Joe will address them.
One more did funnel in, Clinton, and it was, can someone who has Salesforce use the Highland Cloud? So I'm going to make some assumptions here, but I would assume that you're probably using Salesforce as your member system, and you're talking about an integration with Salesforce. So I'll answer it that way. Hopefully answer it correctly, or to your question, but the answer is yes, right? So, we talked a little bit about integrations earlier, Clinton, and when I'll use appeals and grievances as an example, one of our accelerators. As part of that, we want those integrations, right? We want to be able to tap into your member system, your provider system, your claim and auth system, and have seen Salesforce in the past. So it's not uncommon. We're actually seeing more and more payers using Salesforce as their member database and even their call tracking tool. So that is actually the system we hit in a lot of cases to pull back member data. So absolutely, yes.
Nice. There's another question that came in that how many systems or applications do you integrate with? I'm guessing this is how many systems do we, KittyWorks, integrate with?
I would say it's a number too big to name, but I will say this. I spoke a little bit about App Enabler earlier. We talked about RPA, and there was the other question about using RPA as a way to exchange data between systems. Maybe if you have a legacy system that does not have an API that we can't take advantage of, those are great setups for RPA and App Enabler as well. So ultimately, we have not run into very many applications that we can't get the data into or out of that we need to integrate with. So there's also even purpose-built applications that are direct with OnBase. So if you have one that you want to discuss with us again, please grab us afterwards. We'll be happy to discuss.
John, why don't you touch on how often we update our solution accelerators?
Yeah, it's we do 2 releases a year, affectionately named Poolside for our summertime release and Fireside for our wintertime release. So Medicare appeals and grievances, non-Medicare appeals and grievances, network development and contracting, provider outreach, all of those we try to release 2 a year. And with those, obviously, are your updates to your documentation, your admin guides, your end user guides, any type of regulatory reporting, and then kind of a list of enhancements that were added to that specific release. Good question. And then one last one. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. What is the typical implementation time frame for Highland RPA? Are these long consulting engagements? It really depends on the effort, right? Typically, no, right? Because it's something that someone's performing today. We know the process, right? If a human can articulate that, there isn't a ton of gotchas that come up, right? But depending on the application that RPA is interacting with and the type of the actions that they're doing, it may vary a little bit. But my advice would be reach out to us. Let's talk through what you're trying to accomplish, and then we can get you a much better idea of that engagement.
Well, any other questions?
Not me. Well, we can hang out here for another couple minutes, see if any come through. But yeah, Clinton, thank you for making this easy on me and setting everything up and just kind of allowing me to come in here and spout off, things that I'm excited about. So appreciate everyone's attending today.
Yeah, thank you everyone for taking the time to join us today in this town hall. Like John said, if you have any questions, if you're looking into or exploring the cloud RPA, please don't hesitate to give us a call, reach out as well, via email. Just have that conversation and just let's just understand where you're at. what you're thinking, your initiatives, your goals, your priorities, and we'll explore how we can our team here at Keywords can be of help. So please feel free to shoot us an email or give us a call. Visit our website as well, keywords.com. And with that said, thank you very much, and have a good end to the rest of your day and week.
Yeah. Thanks, Clinton. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.